It's the best time of the year, or at least in my opinion. Welcome inside DETV. Nick Alessandrini, joined, of course, by Jason McCall. And now we have the luxury of being joined by the coach, Bill Harman. If you're in and around the state of Delaware, you know that name. And we have a very special guest as well, covering the Eagles, does a phenomenal job for the News Journal and Delaware Online, Martin Frank. And Martin, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, great to be here. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Doing pretty well. Again, like I said earlier, guys, it's the best time of the year.
Yes, it is.
It's mock draft season. It's NFL draft season. We're now just 24 hours away from the 2022 NFL draft. And obviously, our Philadelphia Eagles have two selections in the first round, or at least some of our Philadelphia Eagles here at the desk have two selections in the first round. And Martin, we're very glad you're able to join us tonight, because we're going to ask you some questions here about the Philadelphia Eagles and what maybe they're thinking come tomorrow night at the NFL draft. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll get right to it here. Let's talk Philadelphia Eagles. Again, they make that trade with New Orleans, the number 16 overall pick and number 19, and a 2022 sixth-round pick to the Saints for 18, a third-rounder, and a seventh-rounder in 22, and then a first-round pick in 23, as well as a second-round pick in 24. So just, Martin, quickly, obviously you know the trade there. Just initial thoughts on what Howie Roseman was able to do with New Orleans.
Yeah, I think it was pretty much a heist. It was incredible. You know, the Eagles had the three first-round picks originally at 15, 16, and 19, and he turned that into two picks this year and two picks next year. And the reason why, you know, they wanted to do that was, number one, you'd have to pay like three, you know, the salary cap purposes, three first-round picks, that'll eat up a decent chunk of the salary cap. But also, you get an extra first-round pick in 2023, and if the Eagles aren't sold on Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, well, then they have the ammunition to either, you know, package those two picks to move up, you know, in the draft next year to get one of the top guys. And next year's quarterback class is supposed to be a lot better than this one. Or you could even use those picks and trade for a veteran, you know, on another team right now. So, you know, the Eagles gave themselves a little bit more flexibility by trading, you know, two of those first-round picks and getting an extra one for next year. Plus, they also got an extra third-round pick this year, so they still have 5 picks in the top 101 picks in the draft this year, which is great. And then they got a second-round pick in 2024, and who knows, you know, they might be able to package a couple, you know, both of those second-round picks and move up into the first round that year. So, you know, they gave themselves a lot of flexibility. It was a really good trade on the Eagles' part.
Martin, it's Bill Harman. Great to have you with us. Appreciate your time. We probably all have a consensus view here that this draft may be as unpredictable as any draft in quite some time. And we know in the past Howie Roseman has liked to trade. And give us your opinion on whether you think he'll go up, down, or stay pat with his hand.
I think he might do both, actually. At number 15, I think they could easily move up into the top 10, you know, maybe 8, 9, or 10, something like that, and get one of the guys they're really looking at, which, in my opinion, would be either cornerback Ahmad Sauce Gardner or safety Kyle Hamilton. Both those guys are the best at their positions, and those are two positions that the Eagles desperately need. And then with the other pick at 18, I think they could actually move back and recoup the pick that they would have to package with the other first-round pick in order to move up. So, you know, I think they can kind of help themselves in both directions. If they move up and get either a Hamilton or Gardner, then they can move back and still get a good wide receiver like later in the first round or even early in the second round if that's what they decide to do. So, you know, there's a good chance they're going to do something, and they could do both. So I wouldn't be surprised if you'll see like Howie Roseman really busy wheeling and dealing both to go up and to go back tomorrow night.
And Martin, obviously we can see some different trades maybe potentially happening with the Philadelphia Eagles, but hypothetically speaking, if they were to stay put at 15, what are you hearing? You're plugged in up there, and what are you hearing maybe from Philadelphia what they could do if they were to stay put at 15?
Well, what I would think is, like, if they stay put at 15, if they're not able to move up, then, you know, the top cornerbacks, there's also, besides Gardner, there's Derek Stingley Jr., and, you know, he'll probably be gone too. So I think at 15, they would probably turn to wide receiver, and there you have any number of options. I mean, the top guy could be Jameson Williams, who's, you know, Alabama, who's coming off a torn ACL. He's supposed to be the best receiver in the draft, but he might not be the first receiver taken just because of the injury, but if he's there at 15, I could definitely see the Eagles taking him. If not him, I could see someone like Drake London from USC, who's a big receiver who can go up and get 50-50 balls, kind of like Alshon Jeffrey did when he was with the Eagles in the Super Bowl season. Or they could go for a guy like Chris Olave at Ohio State. The only guy who's probably going to be off the board for the Eagles at that point would be Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. So, if you can get any of those three guys, Williams, London, or Olave, I think they'd be in great shape, and I think they'd be really excited about that.
All right, Martin, Jason here. So I want to know, outside of the first round, I know the Eagles have quite a few draft picks. Who would be a great value pick for the Eagles this year, in your opinion? Who could they actually have potential draft steal that would probably have immediate impact from day one?
You're talking about like a day 2 pick,
Like
second or
a
third
day two,
rounder?
a day 2 or day 3 pick. Who would you say?
Oh, okay. I would say if they don't get a wide receiver in the first round, a second round guy who would be a steal for them would be George Pickens from Georgia. He's a guy who was hurt. He tore his ACL like last spring, and he only returned for like the last 5 games. So, he wasn't 100% obviously, and I think he's the kind of guy. He was like a top recruit coming out of high school and everything, and he was, big things were expected of him at Georgia. So, there's a good chance he slides into the second round, and if that's the case, and the Eagles want to get a receiver there, he would be an awesome pick. I think like with the year being a year removed from the ACL injury, he'd be ready to come in. He'd probably be just as good as a first round pick, if not better.
Martin, I'm interested, going back to the trade, in terms of trade capital. Do you think Andre Dillard is dealable here, and that they might use him to trade up or to package a deal to trade back?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's a great point. I mean, the thing with Andre Dillard is the Eagles have to make a decision by Monday whether to pick up like his 5th-year option, which is in 2023. And if they do, it would be worth $12 million that year. And Dillard right now is a backup. Jordan Mailata beat him out for the starting left tackle job, and Lane Johnson's on the right side. So you're not going to pay a guy like Andre Dillard $12 million, to be a backup, a swing tackle, basically. So, yeah, I mean, they would love to package him. And offensive linemen are kind of at a premium these days. I mean, every team needs it. You saw what happened to the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl, for example. So, if a team like that can't get an offensive lineman in the draft, I mean, Dillard would make great sense. He's got, starting ability. He started, I think 5 games last year, 4 the year before or something like that. I mean, up and down, obviously, but he's a former first-round pick, and if you feel like, he's better than a guy you might be able to get in the draft, then yeah, why not do that? And I think the Eagles would love to trade him, so they don't have to worry about whether or not they need to pick up the option, because personally, I don't think they will. So if they can get something of value for him and it helps them move up, and in the trade market on draft night, then yeah, they'll definitely do it.
And Martin, it seems like every year, at least early on in the draft process, that the Eagles fans, everybody gets riled up. The Eagles need a linebacker. They need a linebacker every year almost, it seems. But that's not something the Eagles are particularly interested in year in and year out. Obviously, there's a lot of talk, Devin Lloyd, Nakobe Dean in this draft. Is this the year the Eagles take a linebacker?
I don't think so. I was really leading in that direction up until like the beginning of April when they signed Kaiser White from the LA Chargers. And I think they kind of picture him as a guy that could just plug in and play right away. Now, they only signed him to a 1-year contract, so like if they wanted a long-term guy, like maybe Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean, guys you just mentioned, I mean, but I don't see them using a first-round pick on those guys. I think the draft is actually pretty deep with linebackers. They can get a good one on day 2. They can get Tyndall from Georgia. They could get Chad Muma from Wyoming. Both those guys are supposed to be really good linebackers. And if you can get them in the second round, I think that has much more value to the Eagles than using a first-round pick on Lloyd or Dean, when they could address other positions like wide receiver or, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. Those are more like immediate needs for the Eagles.
Martin, going back to the pick at 15, and let's say they take Jameson, Williams. Do you think that's a little bit of a redundancy with Devontae Smith, two players very similar? Let's not even include the ACL comeback for Williams. Would you have any concerns there?
I actually, I think it's the opposite. I think like the Eagles definitely need like somebody on the other side who can kind of take some of the heat off Devontae Smith. You know, Williams isn't the biggest guy around, but he's fast and he can get open deep, and you know, he could work the middle of the field and everything like that. And you know, between him and Smith and Dallas Goedert at tight end, I mean, you've got three dynamic receivers. I don't think they would look at it like, oh, we can't get another guy who's like Devontae Smith. We need somebody different. I think they're just going to go for the best receiver available. And if that's Jameson Williams, then I think they'd be very happy with that. Plug him in right away. I mean, Olave is kind of like the same thing too. I mean, he's not a really big guy. He's just really silky smooth, kind of like Devontae Smith is, and can do a lot of different things. And, you know, they'll find a way to use those guys. I mean, if you have, the more playmakers you have, the better off you are. I mean, yeah, ideally you'd like to kind of vary it a little bit with a bigger guy and a smaller guy, but you know, if he's the best guy, then he's the best guy, and that's what they'll take.
All right, I would say my question would be, I know that you can never have too many running backs. So at value, again, going into day two, even into day three, you know, with Miles Sanders coming on his last year's rookie deal, where do the Eagles go at running back in this draft? If they draft
I definitely think they're going to take one. I could see them taking one as early as the third round. I mean, if Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M is still available, I mean, he's kind of like Miles Sanders, you know, same size and everything. He can work inside, can work outside. I mean, he probably needs to work a little bit more on catching passes out of the backfield. But, you know, if you could use him like first and second down, go to a guy like Kenny Gainwell on third down, I mean, yeah, I could definitely see them drafting a running back, you know, day two, probably, because of the situation you just mentioned with Miles Sanders. He's on the last year of his contract. You know, he hasn't really put together a full season yet. He's missed like 9 games the last 2 years, hasn't quite gotten to 1,000 yards. I mean, he's got the talent and everything. And if he puts it all together this year, another thing is, if he puts it all together this year and has a great year, he's probably going to price himself out of returning to Philadelphia because, you know, he's going to want to get a big payday, and somebody out there is probably going to do it. And it won't be the Eagles because they don't usually value that position, much like linebacker. I mean, they don't pay, you know, running backs, you know, exorbitant salaries and everything. So I could definitely see them either way. You know, if Miles has a great year, you know, they'll draft a running back this year and just let him play next year. And if he doesn't, well, then they need one anyway. So there you go. So yeah, I definitely think a running back is in play for Eagles. Probably day two, you know, second or third round.
Martin, do you have any thoughts on whether the Eagles might take a quarterback in the second round?
I don't think so. I would be shocked if they did. But then again, I mean, I never saw them taking Jalen Hurts in the second round in 2020. So, you know, I know they did their due diligence on all the quarterbacks, like guys like Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis, and you know, all the top guys, Coral, Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, and Sam Howell from North Carolina. So, I mean, I would never say never, but I would be really surprised if they did take a quarterback, you know, in the second round. I don't see it happening. I think the quarterback class is much better. It's supposed to be much better next year. And, you know, they want to give Hurts as many, you know, weapons as they can and see how good he is. And if he's not, then they'll go for a quarterback next year. I don't see them doing it this year, but could be wrong. You never know.
You know, there's some great ones lined up for next year. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, the two guys that'll be ahead of that draft class in 2023. And Martin, again, thanks for joining us before we let you go here on DETV. Just let us get your dream scenario here for the Eagles in round one. If you were the GM, you're Howie Roseman here, hypothetically, what's your dream scenario for Philadelphia?
My dream scenario would be trading up and getting Kyle Hamilton. I mean, this guy he's 6'4" as a safety. He can pretty much do everything. He's big enough where he can like handle a tight end. He's big enough where he can like, you know, rush the passer on a blitz. He can cover deep. I mean, he would be my ideal draft pick. And then, you know, with the other pick, if they can get somebody like with number 18 pick, or even move back a little bit and get somebody like Chris Olave, I mean, that would be awesome first round. probably too good to be true, but you could always dream, right?
Hey, we like to dream here at DETV, so yeah, that does sound good. But Martin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again. Just 24 hours away from draft day. Again, the Eagles' 2 first-round picks tomorrow. Martin, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Martin, be well.
All right, take care.
A special thanks to Martin Frank from the News Journal Delaware Online. Does such a great job covering the Eagles. Very lucky to have him here tonight on DETV, shedding a little light into what the Eagles could or should do come tomorrow night. Just quickly, Bill, what'd you think of what Martin had to say about the Eagles?
Well, I have a feeling that Howie Roseman is going to have some trades. Whether he goes up or down, I'm not sure of that. I think Hamilton, myself, is a little overvalued inside 10. I think you might be able to get him at 12 or 13, but we'll see about that. But I like the idea of a cornerback or a safety for sure. I think that's a big Eagles need. And I thought Martin really had done some great research on how they might maneuver Dillard. I think that's something that could certainly be used, that trade capability there, and also removing it from the salary cap, that fifth-year option. So a lot of things going on, and Martin really gave us some great feedback there on the Eagles.
Jason, what do you think?
I would say I do like the idea of staying pat at 15 and maybe draft Jameson Williams and pairing him with Devontae Smith would be a great fit for the Eagles as far as a dynamic receiver on each side of the field. But I also feel like I know the Eagles don't normally draft linebackers in the first round, but I wouldn't be surprised if this year they stop that trend and actually draft a linebacker, say Devin Lloyd, in the first round.
Again, we seem to hear that almost every year. Again, we'll see. We'll get to this mock draft that we have planned for everyone tonight. So that's where we're going to go from here. You heard what the Eagles should do. Thanks to Martin Frank. Let's dive now to our DETV special NFL mock draft 2022. Again, tomorrow night. So we're going to jump right in here, guys. Again, this is what we think the teams are. I think the teams are going to do. You guys are going to let me know what you think of my mock draft here. And again, projections, not what I would do personally, not a big board, a mock draft, if you will. So let's start with Jacksonville, the top pick in this year's draft. Again, you don't typically see back-to-back, but they have it this year. Trevor Lawrence, the top pick in the draft. Last year, they franchise tagged Cam Robinson, able to sign him to a 3-year deal today. So they got that offensive line early on in the process. Some thought Jacksonville was leaning towards the offensive line before they franchise tagged Cam Robinson. Odds on now with Vegas has Trayvon Walker, the interior defensive lineman from Georgia, as the odds on favorite to go number 1, but it's draft week. We know there's a bunch of smoke screens. People like to put things out there. Bill, I have Trayvon Walker going number 1. Again, that's not what I would do personally. I personally am an Aiden Hutchinson fan, guys, so that's where I'm going to lean here. What do you think of Trayvon Walker, 1 to the Jaguars, and new head coach Doug Peterson?
Well, as we all know, this is a brand new staff, and the defensive coordinator, Mike Caldwell, is a very aggressive play caller, and he's going to want to bring an edge player and have the best one available. To me, it's a coin flip between Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson. I think they're both terrific players for young people. They have their pros and cons. I happen to be a little bit more of a Hutchinson fan. I just love his motor. To me, Walker is a little bit more unproven. He's got great metrics, though. He's very young, runs extremely well. You've given us some great info here. 4.51 for a man that size is pretty exceptional. But I just like Hutchinson's ability to run the bend, as we call it, coming from that edge. Walker, a little bit more straight line, has good change of direction. So I think it's certainly a pick that you wouldn't want to say is a bad one. I think either he or Hutchinson, but Walker seems to be where the smart money is going in this draft.
Jason, over to you now, Jaguars, with that top pick. Are you leaning Hutchinson or Trayvon Walker, or maybe someone else here at number 1?
Yeah, I'm not leaning toward either two of those. I'm leaning toward Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon. I think he has the best skill set out of the 3 people that we just mentioned. I feel like his 40 time and his first step quickness is something that the Jaguars can't pass up. And I just feel like him being a top recruit in the come out of high school in 2019, and I'm looking at his first team all-conference, 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. I don't think you can teach any of that, and I just think his speed and his hands are great enough to be the number 1 pick, and him going side to sideline, I think that's where he separates himself from Hutchinson and from Trayvon Walker.
And again, you're seeing those Trayvon Walker highlights on your screen. He did have 7 pressures in that national championship game against Alabama. Again, one of those late risers that you get year in and year out here in the NFL draft. So Trayvon Walker, the odds to go favorite at number 1. I do have the Jacksonville leaning that way, at least in this mock draft. So they take Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall. But again, we know Doug Peterson loves offensive linemen. We saw what he was able to do with the Eagles when they went to the Super Bowl back in 2017. So again, we heard today that Khan, it was reported anyway, Khan is leaning towards Hutchinson. Balky is leaning towards Trayvon Walker. Obviously, he was there with the Niners when they drafted Aldon Smith. He sees a similar comp there between Aldon Smith and Trayvon Walker. So Balky's leaning Walker, Khan's leading Hutchinson. For the sake of the mock draft, we've got Trayvon Walker going number 1. So that means Detroit, they get the hometown kid there at number 2, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. He's going to stay right there in the state of Michigan. Got him going number 2 to the Detroit Lions. And word on the block would be they would be ecstatic if you were able to fall there.
Well, I love Hutchinson. He has a tremendous motor. He's a local boy. He plays with a relentless passion that I know the Detroit Lions fans would love to see. He can run the bend, as we talked about, as well as anybody in this draft class. He's strong, he's versatile, and I just love his playmaking ability. He can play up, he can play down, and his favorite move, as you just saw it there, is that inside swim move that he gets the tackles off balance and then works inside. He's got great hand skills as well, and I just think, to me, he has that motor that Walker really hasn't shown yet.
And what do you think about Hutchinson, Jason? 14 sacks in 2021.
I love Hutchinson at number 2 to Detroit. They need something to cheer about, trading away Matthew Stafford, with Jared Goff, and then you see Matthew Stafford hoisting Lombardi. They need something to cheer about in Detroit, and getting the hometown kid, local product from Michigan, and Aiden Hutchinson, who can produce on day 1, which is what you need if you're a Detroit Lions team. You need people who can come in and produce day 1, work through training camp, and know they're number 1 on the depth chart. And I think he would do just that for them and bring some excitement again back to that Detroit Lions fan base, and hopefully be a building block for the next 10 to 12 years. So I love the pick of Hutchinson at number 2 going to Detroit.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. Hutchinson, I like that pick for Detroit at number 2. And now over to 3, the Houston Texans, one of a few teams this year that have 2 first-round picks. We're seeing a lot of that out of teams here in 2022. And I like my offensive lineman, fellas, I really do. And I'm going to start the offensive lineman here at pick number 3. And I wouldn't be surprised if picks 1 or 2, you saw an offensive lineman such as this guy, Ike Ekwonu from NC State. Again, passing on opportunities to play at Yale and Harvard, going to NC State because he wanted to play against better competition. And if you see the tape on him coming up here shortly, he may be the best offensive lineman in the draft. So versatile, finishing blocks. He's spectacular down the field, Bill, and I got him going 3 to the Texans.
Well, I think that's a great pick by you and by the mock draft. What I love about him is they need protection for Davis Mills at the very least. He can play guard and tackle. He's extremely quick. He has a great punch, especially as a guard playing against those 1 and 3 techniques. Arm length is a little questionable, but he's got a great set and he can play to the second level. And I think the thing that you mentioned earlier about the Ivy Leagues looking at him, he has a very high IQ. He's a patient blocker who's got great balance. This is a terrific choice here for Houston if they take him at 3.
Now, Jason, it could have gone in different ways there. Ike Ekwonu would be my first tackle off the board. There's another very talented tackle still there in the first round. Where do you see Houston going if they go offensive lineman at pick 3?
They can go with Ike, or they can go with Evan Neal from Alabama. I don't think you can go wrong with either pick. There's not too much difference between 3 and 5, honestly. And I think if you can get either one of those guys in the top 5, you're doing your team some justice drafting either one. But I can't argue with Ike being sucked at number 3.
Again, it was close for me when ranking these guys. Again, this is a mock draft, what I think will happen. I do have Ike as my number 1 tackle here in 2022. Evan Neal, though, right behind him as the second-ranked tackle for me, guys. 6'7", 337 pounds. Versatility early in his career at Alabama. Phenomenal pass protection, probably the best pass-protecting offensive lineman in this year's draft, as opposed to Ike Ekwonu, who's obviously great in the run-blocking game. So, again, couldn't go either wrong with these guys, but I have Ike Ekwonu going 3 to the Houston Texans. That takes us to pick number 4, the New York Jets. Always a hot topic come draft day, obviously, with Joe Douglas this year. They got Zach Wilson, their quarterback of the future, in the first round last year. Also added Elijah Vera Tucker in the middle of that first round, the talented guard at USC. So where do they go in 2022? I've got them taking Ahmad Sauce Gardner, the corner
Sauce.
from Cincinnati. I mean, you could just go on and on talking about Sauce. Fantastic. Helped Cincinnati get into that college football playoff. Played well against Alabama in that game. Obviously going up against some talent on the other side. I mean, you look down at some of these statistics for Sauce Gardner. Hasn't allowed a touchdown in his college career. I mean, press coverage, he's been fantastic. Jason, what's your thoughts on Sauce?
That's the stat right there. Hasn't allowed a touchdown in his college career. That's amazing. I look at Sauce as the top corner in the draft over the other projected top corner, Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU. I just think Sauce has the it factor. And I think with Sauce, I think you can also probably play him in some nickel coverage as a safety if you wanted to, with their defensive schemes in New York. But I love the pick of Sauce Gardner, and they really haven't had a big name corner since Revis Island, Darrelle Revis. So I think he's the next guy in New York.
Well, I agree with you, Jason. I love this player. First of all, he is a lockdown guy. You can put him out on the island, as you mentioned, and he is terrific out there. He can play both man and zone. He had 5 games this year where he didn't allow a catch in his area. He had 9 interceptions on his career, so he's obviously got great ball skills. He has a terrific closing burst. He is a great route reader, and he's able to jump routes. And he's just got terrific playmaking and hand skills that I think make him far and above the best corner to be taken. I think this would be a very savvy choice by the Jets at 4.
Again, real physical up on the line of scrimmage, can give you great press coverage. He's long, 6'3", 190 pounds, 34.5% completion percentage allowed. That's the lowest since 2019 for a corner in college football. Only 8 catches for 60 yards as the nearest defender in coverage in the 5 games in 2021. You mentioned the games with no catches. A phenomenal career, 4.41 on the 40 for Sauce. We have him going 4 to the Jets. I think that'd be a good pick for them there. Let's head to number 5. We'll stay in New York, but this time it's the New York Giants out of the NFC East. Daniel Jones, known for turning the ball over, maybe taking some hits. That offensive line has not been great for the Giants in the last couple years. That's going to change here in 2022. They take Evan Neal from Alabama, so we have going 5, Evan Neal to the Giants. Bill, thoughts? Is that a good pick for them there?
It absolutely is. Brian Dable, the new coach, who was the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, they need some help at offensive line. He can play right or left. He's a big man. He's got terrific feet and great hand skills. Occasionally he gets a little off balance, but they're going to be able to correct that. He is a terrific run blocker. So with Saquon Barkley, if they want to establish the run, which Dable likes to do, they'll be able to have a big man for 6'7", 360. I like the fact that he is solid on both sides. He can play right and left. He was a 3-year starter. He has an extremely explosive punch. And of course, coming out of Alabama, he's a winner, so he knows what it takes to get the job done. I think a terrific choice. Interestingly enough, guys, he played in his first year, he was guard, then he moved to right tackle, and then he ended up his career this past year at left tackle. So a lot of versatility as well.
Now, you can do a lot with that, Jason. You already talked a little bit about Evan Neal. Here he goes off the board at 5 to the Giants.
Yeah, I feel like every year in the draft we talk about the Giants and then address the offensive line. And I mean, they've drafted Eric Flowers, didn't work out, and a few other players they drafted in the first rounds over the past few years. But I feel like if this stays, as this mock draft is showing here, if they're able to land Evan Neal at 5, it would be a great win for them. Again, you need to protect Daniel Jones at all costs. It looks like he's going to still be their quarterback for the
at least for this year
foreseeable future. So adding a pick like Evan Neal, able to give Daniel Jones maybe that extra second or two to make a better decision throwing the ball downfield. You never know what could happen with the Giants. A few plays here or there go a different way. Maybe have a few more wins. So you add at least 2 wins to your season, adding a player like Evan Neal to your lineup.
Evan Neal, fantastic tackle out of Alabama. He'll go 5 to the Giants here in this mock draft. Now we're going to Carolina here at 6, and this is where things got interesting for me, guys. Again, hypothetical mock draft, what I project to happen, not myself. And I'm going to go Malik Willis, the quarterback from Liberty here at 6. Again, obviously every year you have those quarterbacks fly up the board. Nobody knows what's really going to happen. Again, Willis for me on the big board's around 20. Kenny Pickett, 19, 20 range as well. But again, Matt Rule, they didn't take the quarterback last year. They decided to train for Sam Darnold. Did not work out for him. He's on the hot seat this year. So it wouldn't surprise me maybe if they were to trade back at Kenny Pickett because he needs to win right now. Malik Willis, more of a guy you would like to sit behind a Sam Darnold and give him a year to maybe develop and then throw him out on the field. But Malik Willis has been the talk, has been the ceiling for him. That's where everybody looks at maybe a lower floor, but the ceiling through the roof, arm strength through the roof. Again, I would have him going on the big board around 20, but Carolina's been flying to all these different pro days, all the quarterback pro days they have been there for, and they've brought numerous staff, and that makes you think maybe they're thinking quarterback this year with Malik Willis.
Well, I personally think this is much too high of a choice. If Carolina really covets him, maybe they move back, trade back. I know they like Sam Darnold just enough, but not enough to necessarily stick with him. Matt Rule's probably got to win here in the next year or two. My problem with Willis is everybody talks about this high ceiling. Well, I'm not quite sure how you define that. I don't have a good feel for that. You know, he threw 27 touchdowns but had 12 picks. Actually, in 3 of the games, he had 3 picks. 61% completion percentage. I know people love his athleticism, the fact that he's a good guy, can get out on the perimeter and make plays. I just think this is a big reach to me. But if Carolina really needs him, I guess they could pay up and play him here, but we'll see. I'm not a drafter of potential. I'm a drafter of what I really think a guy can do right now and not necessarily 3 or 4 years down the road, because so much, as we know, can happen in that amount of time.
You're absolutely right. Jason, I have the first quarterback here going 6 to the Panthers. That's Malik Willis. Is he your top quarterback? And if so, what do you think about him at 6?
He is my top quarterback, but again, way too high at number 6. I think Carolina can address a few more needs other than drafting a quarterback at 6 in this not so great quarterback draft this year. So I wouldn't draft Malik Willis number 6. I actually think he's going to slide because of just the other players in the draft right now. And again, by this being one of the lackluster quarterback drafts in some time. And just to throw a stat out there, 29 quarterbacks have been taken in the first round between 2006 and 2016. None of them are with their original team that drafted them. That says something about quarterback classes, and I think this class isn't the one you want to continue with that trend as well. So I think at number 6, I think Carolina goes more.
Your boy there is still there at number 6. What do you think? Do they take your boy out of Oregon?
I think they do.
And I think that could definitely go that way. But in this one, Malik Willis goes 6, and that means the Giants, they get this man at number 7. That's Kayvon Thibodeau, the number 1 recruit out of high school a few years ago. Falls to 7. Early in the draft process, it was a big battle between him and Hutchinson, who was going to be the number 1 pick. But here we are a few months later, every year, and here he is sliding down the boards. We've seen him at 10. You maybe in some mock drafts, you see him after 10. I've got him going here 7 to the Giants. And if the Giants are able to get Thibodeau and Evan Neal, I think that's a pretty successful first round.
I'm going to let Jason start on this one because Thibodeau's his guy.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I think Thibodeau should actually be the number 1 pick overall. I mean, when you compare his stats to Trayvon Walker, who was the number 1 pick, I mean, Trayvon Walker really had just 9.5 sacks in 3 seasons and 6 total 2021. I mean, okay, but not really great. But when you put on the tape, Thibodeau always pops out on tape. When you say someone passes the eye test, he always passes the eye test. He has a great feel for getting to the quarterback and gets his hand, deflections and fumbles. So I just think with his overall skill set, and I think that at the next level, he'll be able to just be himself and not be shackled to a certain style of defense. He can just run wild, and he'd be a great fit with the Giants at number 7.
Now, my concern with Thibodeau, I'll go with his positives first. I mean, he is a terrific athlete. He's got a great first step burst. He uses his hands very well, and he's a very fast straight line and change of direction. I think there's been some question of his motor. You know, and by that, I know that's an overused term. How hard does he play every play?
Yeah.
And that's one thing in the pros. If you get a loaf, you're probably not earning your money. And the second thing is, if you really watch him closely, he does not have those, what people like to call oily hips. He's not really a bend and burst guy. He's going to use his power and just his straight line speed. So I think that's one thing he needs to develop, his hip flexibility to be an outstanding player. I think he's a really good one. I think falling to 7 would be a great spot for the Giants to pick him up. I like a lot of things about him, but there's some questions that I have myself.
And again, that could be the reason why he was talked about as the #1 pick just a few months ago here, going 7 to the New York Giants, who get Evan Neal at 5 and Kayvon Thibodeau at 7. On to #8 in the Atlanta Falcons, who could go a number of different ways. Interesting offseason for Atlanta. Matt Ryan, they thought they were in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. That led them to, on bad turf with Matt Ryan, who, they were trying to get him. Matt Ryan decided when they didn't that maybe he didn't want to be back in Atlanta, so he has moved on to Indianapolis. They have Marcus Mariota now in Atlanta. Where do they go here at #8? And I have them getting a weapon. They lacked wide receivers last year. They lacked playmakers down the field. Kyle Pitts without Calvin Ridley, who will not be there next year, obviously due to some other reasons. They could focus on Kyle Pitts. He was getting kind of that double coverage down the field. They had nowhere else to go. So I'm going to have the first receiver coming off the board here at #8, and that's going to be Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from Ohio State. I can see him being the first receiver here taking by Atlanta at #8.
I think this would be a great selection for Atlanta. He's not particularly big, but he's a great route runner. He can play the X or the Y, the wide receivers. He can move into the slot. He is terrific after the catch. He is explosive. He is very versatile. He makes a lot of moves. If you watch him on tape, you'll see some spins, some jukes. He's really got a lot of good stuff to him. He would certainly complement Kyle Pitts in their offense. He's got that great suddenness when he comes out of breaks, uses his body extremely well. And the other thing I like about Wilson is he's willing to catch the ball over the middle. He is a tough guy, not a lot of drops in his career, very focused on the ball, would be an outstanding choice for Atlanta.
And again, a little bit more of a swagger than maybe some of these other receivers. Some people refer to it as cockiness, but I like the swagger there provided by Garrett Wilson, 6 foot, 183 pounds, 21 years old. I got him as the first receiver off the board. Jason, what do you think?
I can't argue that. You can draft him or his teammate, Chris Olave, honestly. But I think with Garrett Wilson, you get the extra intangibles, you get the swagger, which comes out in his play, but you also get a receiver who catches with his hands. I think that's very, very important. Catching passes from Mariota, I think you'd be able to catch with your hands. Receivers who catch the ball with their body, I don't think they really mesh out well in their first couple of years. You have to learn how to do certain things, but he has excellent hands, and I feel as though this would be a very great pick for Atlanta as they have to replace Calvin Ridley with the worst $1,500 ever spent.
Yeah, you might be right about that, Jason. Again, for Garrett Wilson, played out of the slot there early in his career in 2020. Did most of his damage last year outside, so you see the versatility there for Wilson. Yards after the catch, a big bonus for me. Also think he's silky and smooth, as is Chris Olave and some of these other guys. Again, not a big board, mock draft, Garrett Wilson 8 to Atlanta. That takes us to 9 and Seattle, who making the trade. Russell Wilson now playing Mile High in Denver. And that means the 9th pick goes to Seattle in that deal. And I've got Seattle taking some offensive line help as they've needed it for some time now. They get the offensive tackle from Mississippi State, Charles Cross, out of that pass-happy offense down there in the SEC. So he's got some reps with some bass-blocking reps there, Bill. What do you think about Charles Cross?
Well, he played for Mike Leach, and that offense was geared to the pass. 50 passes a game in about 7 of those games. He graded out extremely well with his pass protection. I like him because he's young. He's 6'5", 310. He can play both sides of the line if he has to. He is a great knee bender, and I think of the offensive tackles, though he probably isn't forecast as high as the other two, he might be the most ready to play. He's great with what we call the mirror and slide. That enables him to stay in front. He's an excellent zone blocker, which is the way Seattle likes to run the ball, especially they have a new offensive coordinator, David Canales, this year, and he'll be great in that. But he is a terrific finisher, and that's one of the problems that Seattle's had, and probably the reason Russell Wilson is no longer there. They couldn't run the ball consistently enough. And I think with Charles Cross at offensive tackle, they're going to be able to sustain more of these drives, keep their defense off the field longer, and give a little bit of break to the quarterback, whoever that may become.
And that's also a good question. And Drew Lock right now, the proposed starter for Seattle come the regular season here in a few months. Charles Cross helping out that Seattle offensive line there. Jason, what do you think of Charles Cross?
They should have. I wish he was available a year ago to protect Russell Wilson.
He'd still be there.
He would still be there. But as Coach said, this is a great pick at number 9 for Seattle. Like he made a very big jump from 2020 to 2021, and he looks like he has the determination to become a great player as he made the leap 1 year, the next in college, but also I think he's going to continue that progression and turn into an all-pro. And, in Seattle, they're hoping for another Walter Jones, of course, has Kennedy up there, so hopefully he turns out at least to be half as good as those two offensive linemen were for the Seahawks.
Yeah, if he is, they get a steal there at 9. Some people have Charles Cross up there with Evan Neal, Nicky Ekwonu in terms of offensive line projections. So again, if they're able to get him at 9, I've seen him go as early as 4, 5, 6 as well. So we have him going 9 to Seattle there. That takes us to the Jets, one of the teams that has those 2 first-round picks. We have him taking Ahmad Sauce Gardner 4, and then I have him taking at 10 another receiver, the second receiver off the board. My top ranked wide receiver in the draft, that is Drake London out of USC. Drake London, the big guy, 6'4", played small forward, a basketball player at USC when he was younger, able to focus on football. He's a big target. He would be a big target for Zach Wilson, something they need over there in New York.
I'll take it. I think Drake London, pairing him with Zach Wilson, I think that's going to be a great fit. They need a big guy who can go across the middle, but also I think Drake London will also be a great third down receiver, next level, get that possession, you can get that first down, you can throw to him, he has a pretty large catch radius, and he's kind of slippery. He's more slippery than you think, but I think he has the overall, all the tools, all the intangibles, one of the best skill sets of the wide receivers in the draft. And again, at 6'4", you can't teach height, and I think that's what they'll need to contest jump balls, and I think he'll be able to kind of erase some of Zach Wilson's errant throws, if you will.
And again, Zach Wilson needs some help over there in New York. Coach, what do you think about Drake London with the Jets at pick 10?
Well, one of the most overused terms in football is catch radius, but London has it. He's absolutely my favorite receiver in this draft. I love his size. I love his versatility. You mentioned what a basketball player he was, an athlete. That really means something to me, especially played at the college level. He makes contested catches. He's terrific in the red zone. He reminds me of Mike Evans of Tampa Bay. I mean, if you can find a Mike Evans right here for the Jets, along with Zach Wilson as somebody to throw to, I think you've made a great purchase. I am a huge fan of London. He is my favorite receiver. His body control was terrific. And let me tell you something, he'll go up and compete against anybody for the ball, and that, to me, is his best trait.
Again, those 50-50 balls become 70-30 balls when Drake London is going up for them. Again, let me give you some of his stats. 88 catches, 1,000 yards in just 8 games. 88 catches in 8 games.
8 games.
This past year for Drake London. Again, he's my top receiver, coach's top receiver, and a little bit lower on Jason's board. We're going to get to his top receiver here in just a little bit. We're going to keep it moving to pick 11. It's the Washington Commanders. They early in the process were linked to Kenny Pickett, maybe Malik Willis, but then they traded for Carson Wentz, give up a few draft picks there to bring in Wentz from Indianapolis. And here they are at 11, and I think they've got a pretty good guy still available that could really help that defense. I'm going with Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame. Again, big board-wise, maybe up a little bit more. Safety, a position maybe coaches why you see him slip a little bit here. Thoughts on Kyle Hamilton, 11 to the Washington Commanders?
Well, as we know from listening to Martin Frank, this is a pick that the Eagles would like to make the draft to move up. Whether they would move this high up or not, I don't know. I don't think Hamilton will go any earlier than this. I think this would be a great pick. He has so many great attributes. He is first of all, he's a great athlete. He's a great competitor. You mentioned his metrics. He has some injuries he's coming back from. He's got 8 career interceptions. He can play down at the line of scrimmage. There's a little bit of a beef about that, but I've watched his tackling in some games, and I thought he was very solid down there. So we talk about versatility needed in these defenses today. He could play 1 high safety. He could play 2 high. He could come down in the box. He could be that hybrid coming off the edge. I really like this guy. He's got great closing speed, and he's a terrific competitor. And I would love this pick for Washington. Ron Rivera needs some help on his defense.
I'm there. Jason, Kyle Hamilton at 11. Is he going to be there at 11 for the Commanders? And if so, do you like the pick?
As Coach said again, if he's there at 11 and if the Commanders are there at 11, it would be a great pick. They have a great front 4 in Washington, and you need to solidify the back end, and he would be a perfect plug-and-play piece to solidify the back end of their defense in Washington. Coach Rivera has a great scheme, and I feel like he would be excellent in that scheme. I don't think he would just stay at safety either. I think they're going to move him around if he goes to the Commanders. I think they want him to utilize his skill set to the most potential and his ball skills. You can kind of move him around. But I think that would be a great pick for the Commanders at 11.
And again, for me at least, people like to focus on the metrics. A lot of people thought he would run a faster time, as Coach alluded to, in the 40, just a 4.59, and that's where the slip starts to come in. And again, people like to look at those metrics I have on the paper. Didn't test well, who cares? Because that's how I feel about it. Love the way Kyle Hamilton plays. Again, he closes, has that missile-like closing speed. Love what Kyle Hamilton can bring to the table, and if he's there at 11, I think it'd be a great pick for the Commanders there. Well, that brings us to 12 and Minnesota. Again, no more Mike Zimmer in Minnesota this season. He was the defensive guy, but I'm going to have them sticking with defense here at number 12, and I think they could get a steal if this guy is able to stay healthy. We haven't seen the flashes since 2019. National championship was phenomenal that freshman year. Derek Stingley Jr., the cornerback out of LSU. Again, we mentioned part of that championship team. Jason, you and I were talking about him before we got on the air. Injuries the last couple years have really limited him. A lot of people said he's lost interest the last few years. Maybe that's why his stats and performance hasn't been up to par. But back in 2019, that's some of the best college tape you'll see on a corner.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Stingley could easily be the number one corner drafted in this draft as well. I mean, you can argue Stingley versus Sauce. I mean, in most circles, but I would say for Stingley, he has to prove that this last year playing in 2020 was a fluke, because you look at tape 2019, look at tape 2020, you do see a huge drop off. However, he did play in the SEC against some of the top receivers who are now top receivers on Sundays in the NFL.
Even on his own team. He was guarding Terrence Marshall, Jamar Chase, and those guys at practice, as well as Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, so I don't think you can go wrong with this pick at all, Minnesota. And clearly they love LSU players, with Justin Jefferson being there.
That's
so
right. Some more duels at practice with those two potentially.
Duels at practice, so I can see that happening. And I mean, he's great tackler. He passes the eye test as a corner. Just want to see if he actually has that word motor, if that will be a question if he's drafted that high.
Yeah, and that is the question. Coach, over to you. Derek Stingley Jr., 12 here. Again, saw my number one corner earlier in the draft. Thoughts about Stingley falling to 12 here? And again, a great pro day, and that's kind of what is bursting him back up there. People loved his metrics there at LSU.
What have you done for me lately? 2019 is a long time ago.
It is.
This is a brand new coaching staff. It's a new general manager. They've got to make sure they make a really savvy pick here. I'm not as big a fan of Stingley. If it was 2019, I might be. He's a cover corner. He is not great down in the box. He's got great foot speed, but remember, he only played 3 games this year. He's got good hips. He can recover, and that's probably his best attribute. They would look at him to play man-to-man opposite Patrick Peterson. I'm just not sure if Ed Donatelli's going to play as much man. If not, he's more of a zone guy, so we'll see how that fits in. I mean, Stingley as an athlete is terrific. Stingley in 2019, terrific. He's a little short for my taste for a cornerback, but yes, if you throw in that tape and didn't know what year it was, you'd say this would be a very high pick. So I'm not quite as sanguine as others about him, but if Minnesota likes him at 12, then good for them.
Again, just 10 games combined in the last 2 years for Derek Stingley Jr. So again, that's the question mark. Are you going to be able to get him out on the field? Are you going to be able to get that motor, as Jason alluded to? Does he have the passion and the drive to continue to get better and better? So it's Derek Stingley Jr. there at 12. Takes us to Houston, second pick of the first round at 13. They got it in the trade by sending Deshaun Watson over to Cleveland. So they get this pick here at 13. And I have them taking the edge rusher out of Florida State, Jermaine Johnson. Interesting career for Jermaine Johnson. The transfer from Georgia, got an extra COVID year here, his 5th year, and that's when you started to see the production out of him at Florida State. Great Senior Bowl down in Mobile, and that has him sitting up here in the early part of the first round. I have him going 13 to Houston.
Well, Lovie Smith loves defense. He's also going to be the head coach and the defensive coordinator, at least that's the way it looks right now. Johnson is probably the hottest prospect moving up in the draft at this moment. At least that's what the draft people are saying if you watch a lot of TV. I have a couple problems with him. Number one, he's a little bit older. He's 23. Yes, he is, yeah. And I tend to favor younger players, especially in this draft. He is very quick. He's powerful. I'm just not sure I see all of the hype that moves him up so rapidly. If you could get him at 20 or to 24, I think he'd be a great player. Now, he blossomed in Florida. So maybe instead of Houston in Texas, he played for the Dolphins or Jacksonville.
There you go.
I think he's going to be a good player. I think it's going to take a year or two to develop him, and I think this would be a little bit of a reach for Houston. I understand why they might, but I'm not quite as hyped on him as others.
Jason, Jermaine Johnson, again, interesting career at Georgia, able to make that transfer, really showed up this year for Florida State, has himself definitely going in the first round. What do you think of him here at 13?
I'm kind of with Coach on this. Not sure if that's the way Houston should go at 13.
And again, you've got the mock draft in front of you here.
Yeah.
Where would you go here if not Jermaine Johnson at 13 for the Texans? What do you think?
If a quarterback goes before 20, this is where I would go.
So Houston.
To Houston. And I would probably go, I know we talked about Malik Willis being the top prospect overall and McCall and people like that, but don't sleep on Kenny Pickett or Desmond Ridder going here at 13.
Desmond Ridder. Again, and we'll talk about Desmond Ridder here shortly. And he was up there potentially for QB1 before that game against Alabama. That was the big one for him. Everybody's eyes were on there, finally playing against a really stout defense. Did not look great against Alabama, and that's kind of what has him trailing towards the end of the first, early second round.
Well, if you're asking me what I think of Desmond Ridder,
Yeah, let's go right to Desmond Ridder.
he's my favorite quarterback in the draft.
There you go.
And I'm a big intangibles guy. This is a smart player. He's won 44 games, third most in the history of the NCAA behind Colt McCoy and Kellen Moore.
Kellen
offensive
Moore at
coordinator
Boise State, right?
At Dallas, exactly, at Boise. He is great in the film room. He's a terrific leader. Players just revolve around him. They love playing with him. He's got great skills. I know some of them say he's a little mechanical. When I watch his tape, I don't see quite as much of a robot as they like to say he is. I think he's fleet of foot. He makes great decisions, but most of all, he's a winner. And I think that's great. And he's got the intangibles of the fact that he's a leader and he really loves the game and he's going to spend a lot of time at it.
And again, spoiler alert, I do have Desmond Ridder in the first round. We'll get to him a little bit later as you see the highlights here. Again, it's going to be big come the second half of that first round because the big question is if you take a quarterback in that first round, you get that fifth-year option. So there's the big things that teams are going to be thinking about maybe from 28 to 32. You look at the Lions at 32. Spoiler alert, that's where I have Desmond Ridder going. We'll jump right into it. I got the Lions taking him with the last pick of the first round to get that fifth-year option, and I do think he's going to be a successful starter in the NFL. Coach, I agree with you there. I have him as my third-ranked quarterback, but I agree. I do like Desmond Ridder. My aunt, the chief medical officer at the University of Cincinnati Children's Hospital, so I've been up there a few times, been around the program, have some Cincinnati gear at home. I'm a Desmond Ridder fan for sure.
Well, I like your opinion.
I like that.
So there you go.
And you have a little bit of inside information on him
Inside
as well.
information on Desmond Ridder, absolutely. Again, was in the talks to maybe be potentially the top quarterback taken before that game against Alabama. And again, you don't want to hold one game over somebody like that. It didn't look maybe his best, but again, first time playing against competition like that year. I think he'll be fine going forward. But again, back to what we were saying, it's Jermaine Johnson, 13, going to the Houston Texans. That brings us to Jason's team at 14, the Baltimore Ravens. Jason, you got some gear with you today, I believe, as well.
You mean this team? This watch here?
It's got the Ravens watch, got the Lamar Jackson jersey. Speaking of which, when's that deal going to get done, Jason? What's going on with Lamar Jackson?
I don't think it's going to get done before the season.
No, not before the season?
I don't believe it's going to get done.
And his mom's his agent, I believe, right?
But yeah, she is. But Ravens flock, we are here representing for you guys in Eagles territory.
That's right. There you go. Birds, other birds.
The real bird, 2 rings. But back to the business at hand here. At number 14, I see you have Jordan Davis as the pick in the mock draft here. Yep. But I know that the Ravens have a few draft needs. Edge rusher, inside linebacker, a center, a corner, and defensive line as well. Well, O-line too. But
so where would you go here if
honestly, at this pick, I think I would go George Uncle Flatters from Purdue.
George Karlaftis, yeah, and again, he was one of those slow, was up there again in early the draft process, slipping down more into the 20s, late first round, early second round now again, but this happens every year. Phenomenal at Purdue early in his career. Then once the team started to catch on and realize how good he was, not as production-wise here in 2021, due to all the double teams, and he was the only part of that defense you had to worry about. So that's what they were focusing on there with George Karlaftis, the former Greek water polo player. So how about that? He's a dual sport athlete coach. Again, as we progress here, just thoughts on Jordan Davis at 14 to the Baltimore Ravens.
I love this guy. He is a true 1-3, 2-gap player. He demands a double team at all times. He's got great size. He pushes the pocket well. Since he's always double teamed, yeah, it's hard for him to get to the passer, but they don't need that. And I think Mike McDonald coming back after spending a year at Michigan as the new defensive coordinator, I think this would be a really great pick for Baltimore here. He has great quickness for an enormous man.
Unbelievable quick.
Yeah, he's very fast.
He's going to be a 2-down player, and I don't think it's going to be because of fatigue. It's because they're going to find another rusher to get in. You can move edge rushers inside and be the 1 and the 3, as a lot of smart teams do in these days, and I'm sure Mike McDonald's going to do that. But I like this guy. You've got to be able to stop the run, and you've got to be able to do it, especially in December and January, and I think this would be a great choice for them.
Again, Jordan Davis, Jason, one of the most phenomenal combines we've seen in a while. He was the talk of social media, the talk of TV after he went to the combine and put up a 4.78 40 at 6'6", 341 pounds.
That's freakish.
That's just unheard of.
That is ridiculous.
He ran a faster 40 than I did at high school at St. Mark's, coach. And
I don't think so, Nick. It must
yes.
have been a slow watch.
You're right, there's an error there.
I must have had it. I have old hands.
4.78 at 6'6", 340, 32 in the vertical jump, 123 in the broad jump. He is a freak, a testing freak in terms of that, but also you see the production on the field with one of the best defenses we've seen from a college football team, at least in recent memory, with that Georgia Bulldog team we saw in 2021.
Well, in Baltimore, he is one of the prospects that they're looking at to draft at 14, so you can't go wrong with him either. And of course, you would need to probably draft the eventual replacement for Calais Campbell. So this would be an excellent pick if he does land at 14. So I can't argue with Jordan Davis being selected at 14 either.
So Jordan Davis, 14 to the Baltimore Ravens. That takes us to 15 and the Philadelphia Eagles. You heard the expert Martin Frank tell you what his thoughts were, and I'm going to give you now the mock draft of what I think the Eagles will do. I can see them taking Jameson Williams, the wide receiver from Alabama. You heard Martin Frank reference that here on the program not that long ago. But again, I can maybe see a team trading up and getting or maybe taking Jameson Williams. There's been a lot of talk about that in these last few days. Teams really liking Jameson Williams, tearing the ACL in the national championship game. That was the turnoff. He would have been the #1 wide receiver in most people's boards had it not been for that injury. I've got him going 15 here to the Eagles, coach, but I wouldn't be surprised if, one, he went earlier if a team trade up and tried to get him there. Your thoughts on Jameson Williams?
Well, I just particularly don't like to invest a lot of money in a player, especially a speed merchant coming off of an ACL. Now, that's not to say he didn't get great care and a great operation, and he's probably worked extremely hard, and he'll probably be fine. But I just think when you're I don't want to say a one-dimensional player, but he's just got such great speed, I would hate to see that lost in some fashion. So I would probably look to back him up. I know the Eagles love this type of receiver. Obviously, Devontae Smith, they've had great experience. He could play in the slot. They can move him around. He could be great on those speed sweeps that they love to run out of the jet. So we'll see how he develops. But when you look at him on tape, he has tremendous breakaway speed. He can catch the ball over the middle. He just blows by people. I mean, I'm stunned that the cushion is violated so quickly so many times. But he has outstanding speed. He has good measurables. I just would be a little reluctant because of the ACL and because he is so reliant upon his speed. Not to say that he won't catch tough balls and he has good hands. I just would worry about that myself.
Jason, Jameson Williams, where is he on your wide receivers board? What do you think of him going 15 to the Eagles?
I think it'd be a great fit if he falls this far.
Exactly, that's my point. I agree with you.
You know, we talked about it in the NCAA, talk about you need a little remedy sometimes, but sometimes you need a little Jameson too. So I think neither Eagles could use a glass two of Jameson, and Jameson Williams is available at 15. You make the pick, you pair him with his former teammate, Devontae Smith, and actually all three of them were teammates, I believe, at one point in time, correct? With Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, the Alabama connection is obvious now with the Eagles in their drafting. But to have him on the other side of Devontae Smith. I think Jameson Williams brings another it factor at wide receiver, and they're pretty much interchangeable. But I think Jameson Williams is a better overall route runner compared to Devontae Smith. And I think when you add that to that lineup, and like it's a prove-it year for Jalen Hurts, another weapon will never hurt.
Again, Jameson Williams, 6'1", 179, and 79 catches for 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, 120 targets, just 3 drops there for Jameson Williams. Another interesting thing with him, he broke Ezekiel Elliott's state record in 300-meter hurdles there in high school. So again, the athleticism is there for Jameson Williams. We'll see if he can work on that catch in traffic. Got to be a little bit more physical, but I'm a big Jameson Williams fan. I do not like the comp to Tyreek Hill. Again, I'm not sure if you can compare anybody to Tyreek Hill. So again, not going to use that comparison for Jameson Williams, though I am a fan of him there, especially 15 to the Eagles. That takes us to the New Orleans Saints at 16 to trade with Philadelphia, and they get your man there, Jason, Chris Olave. I have going to New Orleans there. They get a much-needed receiver.
Yeah, they need a receiver. They need a lot of things, but definitely need a receiver because you don't know what the Michael Thomas situation is going to end up being. So
That's another Ohio State receiver to join Michael Thomas. There you go.
It's a saga that went on all year. You don't know how healthy he will be, and with the type of injury that he had, if you're most medical experts are saying that he may not be the same player ever again with all the injuries that happened to him. So if you have an opportunity to draft a player like Olave at 19 here, in a different draft, he'd be a higher pick. But this year's draft, him sliding to 19, you're getting a top 10 talent at wide receiver in the middle of the first round.
And Coach, you heard Martin referencing silky smooth is Chris Olave. Would have been a first-round pick last year had he decided to come out. He decided to return to Ohio State, and he'll be a first-round pick again this season.
I love Olave. I think he runs great routes. He's got good separation speed. He's not the fastest player in the world, but he's very clever coming out of his breaks. He's able to create consistent separation. He tracks the deep ball quite well, which with Jameis Winston you probably have to do, as we know he can be interception prone, so you've got to be able to make some plays. But I think this would be an excellent choice to possibly complement Mike Thomas, as you mentioned. Mickey Lomas likes players like Olave, and I think he would be a terrific choice. I like him. He's a good competitor. It's his route running and his ability to create separation that makes him an excellent choice.
Again, 4.39 40 for Chris Olave. Him and Garrett Wilson really testing very well at the 40-yard dash this year at the Combine. 6 foot, 187 pounds, 13 touchdowns in 2021, 35 in his career at Ohio State. So he can find the end zone. Chris Olave, 16 to New Orleans in my mock draft. We'll keep it moving to 17 in the LA Chargers. A big addition for them in J.C. Jackson in free agency. Some other big guys coming over, including Troy Reeder, going to be with the LA Chargers again here, the Delaware native. I'm hoping to get him on here relatively soon, but the Chargers still could use another cornerback. I'm going to go with Trent McDuffie here from Washington. Again, McDuffie, Edger Booth Jr. from Clemson. Those guys are both Booth Jr. coming off the core surgery, so that's going to be a little bit different. He'll slip for me. But again, I'm going to go with Trent McDuffie from Washington. You're going to see some of the highlights on your screen now. I think Chargers are going to go quarter here, and I think McDuffie could be a good pick for them there.
Well, Brandon Staley loves defense. As we know, he was an outstanding defensive coordinator for the Rams. I think McDuffie really fits the bill here. Not real big, 5'11", 193, but he's got great hips. He's a very smooth runner. He's a solid tackler, and that's what I like about him. He's willing to come down in the box. He attacks those rocket and tear screens extremely well. He can play that cover corner in the man scheme, but he's also got instincts and skills to play zone if Staley wants him to do that. I think he would be an excellent choice here, and I don't think this is a reach. Some people have McDuffie back at the end of the first round. I just like his overall skills and his competitiveness.
Jason, thoughts on Trent McDuffie, the quarterback out of Washington? I know Eagles fans not particularly fan of quarterbacks from Washington. A little Sidney Jones, some other players not working out there, but Trent McDuffie could be a good pick here for the Chargers.
Excuse me, yeah, Trent McDuffie could be a great pick here for the Chargers, but I actually have them taking Booth out of Clemson with this pick. I think DB is where they're going to go either way with this pick, but I do think it'll be Booth over McDuffie. But they're kind of like 1 and 1A, if you will, as far as what you're looking for. Remaining here, so you can't go wrong with Trent McDuffie. I think his size might be a bit of a problem in the AFC West. He's going to have to cover Devontae Adams and players of that stature, but you can't go wrong with the pick.
And again, we talked about McDuffie, 2 interceptions in his 3 seasons, none last year, but again, as Coach alluded to, could be the best tackling corner in this class. Allowed just 1 reception of more than 20 yards last season and didn't allow any touchdowns. And if you go back to the 4 games he played in 2020, no touchdowns allowed then either. So Trent McDuffie, the pick here at 17 for the LA Chargers. On to 18, and it's the Eagles again. Martin Frank, he told us linebacker, not in the cards. Maybe they'll trade down. We don't predict any trades on my mock draft here this year, so we're going to have them staying put at 18, and they're going to take, in my opinion, Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Utah. Again, wouldn't shock me if they don't. Again, some people at home, if you're an Eagles fan, you're saying, a linebacker? There's no way. And again, I might agree with you a little bit, but I just think Devin Lloyd would be too good to pass up here at 18. I know we talk about scheme and maybe the linebacker not as important for Philadelphia, but what I saw out of Devin Lloyd this year for Utah, I just think he'd be a great pick for them there at 18, Jason.
I actually agree with this pick if the Eagles keep it at 18. Devin Lloyd at linebacker position, he brings everything you need in a linebacker. He brings cover skills, he brings great tackling. I believe he's a top linebacker in this draft. You could argue him or Nakobe Dean, but the Eagles need to buck that trend of not drafting a linebacker in the first round, and he fits the scheme very well. And I think you want players that you can move around. And I think Devin Lloyd would be the perfect pick at 18. The Eagles need to get better on defense, and their linebacking core has been suspect for quite some time. So I think you address that with drafting Devin Lloyd.
Again, Coach, Pac-12 defensive player of the year last year. What do you think about the Eagles taking a linebacker here?
Well, I'm not sure they're going to do it because that doesn't seem to be Howie Roseman's
I think I may agree with you
DNA.
there.
But I don't disagree with anything you both said. I really like Lloyd. He shows up great on tape. He's got great size. He's clearly a 3-down player. He can play in coverage. He has good closing speed. He's tough around the line of scrimmage. He has one of those unique abilities just to find his right fit. And sometimes not necessarily with great technique, just because he knows where to go. He's very instinctual. I think he'd be a fine choice for them. They just don't seem to value linebackers as much as, say, the 3 of us might. But this would be a good choice for anybody in and around the 18 to 24 range to me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Again, Devin Lloyd. Well, not sure if the Eagles are going to do it, but I think the talent fits the pick there at 18 for Philadelphia. That takes us to 19, the New Orleans Saints back on the board. And again, both of these teams, the Eagles and New Orleans, 2 first-round picks. And how about the quarterbacks? Again, this is where my big board kind of starts to play in here. Kenny Pickett, 19 to New Orleans. We talked about Jameis Winston. So they get Chris Olave, and then they get Kenny Pickett here at 19. Coach, thoughts on Kenny Pickett here to New Orleans? What do you think of that fit?
Well, there's so many good things about Pickett that I like. He's clearly a winner. He comes from a really good coaching background. Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, I think will really like him. He goes through his progressions extremely well. He's got wonderful poise and touch in the pocket. He's always got his eyes up when the rush comes in. The biggest beef against him, and he threw 42 touchdown passes with only 7 picks, is the fact of his hand size. And I know it's been a great debate. He has 8.5-inch hands. Most quarterbacks they like are the 9.5 to wider. The stats show that there have only been a couple quarterbacks that have been successful with those small hands. He wears gloves, and that can be a little bit of an issue in bad weather. I'll tell you what, sometimes you just got to go with a player that makes it happen. And forget the hand size, forget those metrics. I think he's a really good competitor, and I love his consciousness in the pocket, able to go through his progressions, also can make plays outside the pocket as well. I think this would be a good choice to not push Winston, but just have somebody there that can develop behind him.
Again, 5 years of game experience for Kenny Pickett. Was at Pittsburgh, seems like forever, broke the record, 12,300 passing yards in his career, and broke Dan Marino's passing touchdown record with 81. So anytime you're in a conversation with Dan Marino, you're doing something right. Kenny Pickett for me, got him. Again, he's my #1 quarterback on the big board for me in my quarterback rankings. As you see here on the desk, I got him going behind Malik Willis, though, in the draft in 19. Here to New Orleans. Thoughts about Kenny Pickett? And I think, Jason, you're Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett.
I am Malik Willis over Kenny Pickett, but I have Kenny Pickett going at 20 to Pittsburgh. I think they're going to do a hometown thing and actually bring him in and draft him.
If he's there, I wouldn't mind that for Pittsburgh.
I think he's going to go to Pittsburgh at 20. So if I were picking with New Orleans at 19, I think I would probably draft Daxton Hill. To get a safety, replace Marcus Williams, and you can never have enough of people in the back end of your defense. But I think they go defense and I think Daxton Hill's the pick.
And again, we'll get to Daxton Hill at least in this mock draft, but that's a good point for bringing up Hill. He's been anywhere from 15 to 25 in that range. Could be a slot corner in the NFL. Great speed and athleticism there from Michigan. Again, Michigan could have 3 guys in the first and second round come off that defense with Hutchinson, Ojabo, who unfortunately had that Achilles injury at his pro day. He would have been a first-round pick as well. But Daxton Hill, a great safety. Not a bad pick for you there if you have him going 19. We'll get to him a little bit later in my mock draft. So Kenny Pickett there, 19 to New Orleans. Think will be a good fit with the Saints alongside Chris Olave. That takes us to Pittsburgh at 20. And last year, the Steelers decided to take Kenyon Green out of Illinois. Didn't work out too well at center this year. They really struggled blocking both in the run game and the pass game. We saw that Najee Harris was running into walls, it seemed, all year long. They need a center, in my opinion. Kenyon Green will move him to guard. And I have, of course, Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, here at 20. And early on in the process, he was going anywhere from 10 to 15, sometimes earlier than that, but it's the center position, in my opinion, and probably your guys as well. That's why he's dropping. It's not the talent. Yeah, he's got some short arms. Phenomenal. Can pull either way, as we talked about. Just a killer in finishing his blocks down the field. I love Tyler Linderbaum, and I can't see him get past 20 here at Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of Linderbaum as well. Excuse me, Jason, but you mentioned he can pull. He is very good at the second level. He gets hands on people and is able, with his balance and his leg drive, to maintain contact and finish off blocks. He's very intelligent. Centers have, a lot of really good centers have come out of Iowa over the years. He knows how to direct the play calls, the calls along the line of scrimmage. So I think he'd be a great pick. I think Pittsburgh may go for a quarterback here if you were asking me to forecast it, but Linderbaum, I think, would be an excellent choice for them because of his versatility. He doesn't have a lot of downside to me.
Yeah, I think, again, Linderbaum is the best center in the draft by far, 3-year starter. He is definitely an animal at that position. But I think if Pittsburgh is able to stay at 20, this will be a great pick for them, but I'm also on the notion of Pittsburgh drafting a quarterback at 20.
So let me ask you guys this then. According to the mock draft now, we have Willis and Pickett both off the board. So Steelers are sitting here at 20. Coach, do you take Desmond Ridder at pick 20?
If he's available at 20 and I think I need a quarterback and those 2 guys have gone in front of me, well, since I would pick Desmond Ridder first anyway,
yeah,
I would definitely choose him. So I think it would be an excellent value for Ridder if you're looking for a quarterback to develop. And I think Pittsburgh could do that. Mike Tomlin has great patience. It's a terrific program. You know, they've won consistently for so long. I think it would be an excellent position for any quarterback to be able to step into. Hard to fill Roethlisberger's shoes, but I'll tell you what, he'd be a good one for it because he's humble. He would understand what he's got to do to get the job done. I'm talking about Ridder. He'd be a great choice there.
And again, signing Mitchell Trubisky in the offseason, he might not have to throw Ridder out there initially this year, maybe sit a year potentially, and even though he might not need it, Ridder again, I have him going in the first round. Jason, those 2 guys are there. Are you comfortable with the Steelers taking Ridder at 20, or are you leaning a different way?
I'm leaning Pickett at 20 if he's available.
Say he's not available. Him and Willis are gone. Do they still take a quarterback if those 2 guys are gone, in your opinion?
Yes, they believe Ridder would be the pick at 20.
Again, the Steelers, like Carolina, have been all over these pro days for these quarterbacks. Again, they've been linked to Malik Willis for a long time now. If he's able to slip there, or any of these quarterbacks there at 20, it wouldn't shock me either. I'm going to go with Tyler Linderbaum, the center, there at 20. That takes us to 21, and the New England Patriots. Last year, they sat put, and their man fell right to him. Mac Jones to 15. That's who they wanted. That's who they got. Didn't have to move up. Didn't have to move down. It worked out. Here, they lose J.C. Jackson in free agency to the L.A. Chargers. I'm going with Andrew Booth Jr., Jason, out of Clemson, a guy you had going a little bit earlier. Thoughts about him, 21 to the Pats?
Pats need another corner to replace J.C. Jackson. This will be a perfect pick for them. He would start from day one in New England. He brings everything you need to the table in a corner. And it seems like Clemson just puts out great defensive players year in and year out, and I think he would fit well, as you can see on the tape here. 39 tackles, 5 pass defense, 3 interceptions last season. So you need that type of guy on your defense. And Coach Belichick, he seems to pick defenders that aren't necessarily big names, but he turns them into household names. And I think this would be the next project for him to turn into a household name in the NFL.
And again, Coach, going back to what you said about injuries, Andrew Booth Jr., core surgery this year. Would have potentially been a top 15 pick had not had that injury. Here he is. We have him at 21. Still a little bit early for us here as opposed to some other drafts that we've seen. His fit alongside New England.
How could you not want to play for Bill Belichick, especially if you're a defensive player? Right. You're going to maximize your potential and your value. You're going to be well coached. You're going to play in a very versatile defense. You've got to be able to play both zone and man. You've got to be able to blitz. You've got to be able to play in the slot. You've got to be able to sometimes sink into cover 3. So they'll do a lot of different things with Booth, and I think that injury is minimal to him. I really like this player. He's athletic. I like his toughness as much as anything. He's willing to come down in the box and make plays. I think it would be a great selection, probably almost as much for him as for the New England Patriots, but I think it's one of those really good marriages that would work out well.
Again, 6'4", 194 is Andrew Booth Jr., and again, we'll see him go 21 to New England. We'll keep the mock draft special moving here, heading to pick number 22. And here we go with the Green Bay Packers, guys, and they could have gone a little, different ways. Here they lose, I guess I can't say lose, they trade Davante Adams to the Raiders, get some draft picks. This is one of them here at 22. So they do need some weapons with the wide receiver depth here in the first round in this draft. I'm going to have them going offensive line here at 22. I talked earlier about how I love my offensive linemen, and I think they're the staple of a successful football team. I'm going to go with Trevor Penny, the offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. I think he would be great to insert on that offensive line to help protect Aaron Rodgers. And then, spoiler, I'll have the Green Bay at 28. Maybe you can address that weapon need later in the first round. Jason, what do you think about that? Offensive tackle to Green Bay, you think that's a good pick there for them?
It would be a great pick, but I think they're going to go wide receiver.
So a little bit earlier.
With this pick, a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And I think the wide receiver they're going to draft is Jahan Dotson from Penn State. They need some explosiveness on that field, and with them losing Davante Adams and Valdez Scantling, you're going to need to draft another wide receiver who can make an impact on day one. And I think that Jahan Dotson from Penn State is that guy.
Jason, I think you're right about that. I just think they may get him a little bit later on as we get to the mock drafts there. 20. What do you think about Trevor Penny? Some versatility there. A lot of people view him as a pretty good offensive lineman in this draft. Maybe in the front half of the first round, I got him going 22 to Green Bay. What do you think about Trevor Penny?
I think he's a terrific player. I love this man's dimensions, and he's a tough competitor. It's been proven that Green Bay will draft offensive linemen early on. They need to protect Aaron Rodgers. They're bringing him back. He doesn't obviously have some of his receiving core. They need that, but I think they're going to find other ways to do it, and I think this is an excellent pick. This guy loves to block in the run game, and certainly with Jones, you want to have somebody to do that. You've got to be versatile in your protection. Green Bay, much like Philadelphia, is very willing to move their pieces around. Right tackles becoming left guards becoming right tackles. And this is something I think Penny can do. 6'7", 325, he's young, he's only 22 years old, and I just think his mindset, he is a tough dude, and he wants to finish blocks, and I think if you're not going for a receiver, which they might do, I think this would be a terrific choice. I think he's a little under the radar, and he'll definitely be there, but I don't think it's a reach because of his skill level, and I think he's ready to play.
I agree with you there. Trevor Penny, 22 to the Green Bay Packers, but it wouldn't shock me if they take who I've got going 23 here to the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, some tension there with Arizona this offseason, or moving them from the bio, social media, whatnot. That's the age we live in here in 2022. But I got him taking the talented wide receiver from Arkansas, Traelon Burks. And Traelon Burks, may have seen him early in the process near the top half of the first round. Didn't particularly test as well as maybe people thought, but he didn't test bad either. Pretty good numbers there at the combine. I love what he could do after the catch. He's actually a pretty big body as well. Traelon Burks, I think, is the pick here, 23 to Arizona. You want to keep your quarterback, Kyler Murray, happy, Jason.
Definitely want to keep your quarterback happy, and Traelon Burks would be that pick, and you put him in a slot. He's electric in a slot, and he can do a little bit of everything on the field, and you want someone who can actually not afraid to go across the middle. And I think, for me, the next step for Kyler Murray is him throwing in the middle of the field and finding those soft spots in the zone and finding them consistently. And I think Traelon Burks would help him do just that.
What jumps out to me when I watch Burks is he's a willing blocker, and we haven't really talked about this. Right. So many of these wide receivers, we talk about their skill sets, catching the ball and their speed, their suddenness, but this guy likes to block, and he's got the dimensions to do it. TJ Metcalf, does he kind of look like the same type of player?
That's a fair comparison.
So I like this young man, and yes, he played in the slot. He can play there. I think he can play X or Z. I think they can move him around. I like him because I tend to favor big receivers, especially if the trend is getting some of these smaller cornerbacks. Let's match up these big receivers. He can almost post them up, much like London can do down in the red zone. I think he would be a very savvy choice here for Arizona, and especially to keep Kyler Murray happy if they need to do that.
It seems like they do. 6'2", 225 for Traelon Burks, 22 years old. Again, still ran a 4.55 in the 40 at that weight and height. Going to be a great pick for Arizona. They'll be able to use him right away at pick 23. That takes us to pick 24, and a pick that a lot of the country will be focusing in on here for the Dallas Cowboys, and again, could go on either way. They lose La'el Collins in free agency. He's heading to Cincinnati to help protect Joe Burrow. I got them taking Kenyon Green, the offensive lineman from Texas A&M. I think there's a little bit of a drop-off. You got him and maybe Zion Williams on your big board, more of an interior offensive lineman, but I think in terms of a guy that could play the tackle position, can also put him at guard. I'm going to have Kenyon Green, versatile, going there to the Cowboys at 24 from Texas A&M.
Well, I think it's really important that they grab an inside lineman. And they've had trouble with Williams at left guard. Then they tried McGovern there. He did not pan out as well as they would like. I think Kenyon Green with his dimensions would be great there. And I don't see him as much of a tackle as I do at their left guard. I think he'd be ready to go in there. He's tough. He's physical. An excellent run blocker. Let's get Ezekiel Elliott going again and see what that happens. But you've also got to protect Prescott, of course. That's your franchise. So I think Green for a guard would be an excellent decision here to pick.
Yeah, I agree with Green at guard. Again, you need to see if Zeke is still Zeke from the running back position. So adding a player like Green on the offensive line with his run blocking skills and just his ability to move all around on the line. If someone gets injured or they see a mismatch at a different position, he can fit the bill, and he'll be a great addition to the Dallas Cowboys here at 24.
6'4", 323 pounds is Kenyon Green. We talked about the versatility, Coach, something that you really like to harp on there. Started at right guard as a freshman in 19, left guard in 20, and 4 different positions along the offensive line in 21. So he has that versatility. He'll be comfortable wherever you want to put him, and especially at guard, like we're saying here at pick 24 for Dallas. Don't think they could go wrong there. Kenyon Green, a very talented offensive lineman off the board to the Cowboys at 24. That takes us to Buffalo at 25, and I think this is going to be a great pick if he's there. Daxton Hill, here he is, Jason, the safety from Michigan. If he slips here to 25, some people maybe have him going a little bit earlier, some maybe a little bit later. I've got him sitting right here to Buffalo at 25. Slot corner, potentially free safety of the NFL. Very athletic. I think he'll make a good transition from Michigan to the league.
Yeah, I mean, with Daxton Hill, I had him going earlier, obviously, but the way he plays the game from the corner position and also a safety, I think you can line him up at either position. He's an excellent tackler, very tough-nosed, tough-minded defensive player. And going to a team like Buffalo, we know they can score, but can they stop other people from scoring? And he would be one of those pieces who could possibly be a stopgap from that defensive back position to get them over the top.
Coach, thoughts on Daxton Hill?
Well, with Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier, both defensively minded coaches, obviously Frazier the DC and McDermott the head coach, I think this is a great pick. This guy has freakish speed, especially for a safety. He can play him at corner. The other thing that Buffalo loves to do is run a lot of slot blitzes, and I think he would be excellent coming off the edge. They're very good at disguising that. I think Hill would be terrific. He comes with a great pedigree, would be a terrific choice for Buffalo, and I think he would be really good in the cold weather because he's used to playing there. And I really like this pick a lot, and I like this young man. I think he might go higher, as Jason mentioned, but if you could hold out to 25, would be an excellent choice.
Again, some of the fastest 40 time, or the fastest 40 time we've seen out of a safety in some years. 4.38 in the 40 for Daxton Hill. He'll be off the board at 25 to the Buffalo Bills. That takes us to Tennessee at 26. And Coach, I have them adding some interior offensive line. We talked about him at top of the hour or before the broadcast. That's Zion Williams, the interior offensive lineman from Boston College.
Well, we all know that Tennessee loves to run the football, and I think this guy would be a terrific choice. He is a man. He's ready to play. He's super physical. He finishes blocks extremely well. an outstanding choice. He's versatile. He can play a lot of different positions. I use that word a lot, but that's really the trend that's developing in the NFL, especially with offensive lines and defensive backs. You better be able to play 2 or 3 different spots. And injuries occur, and then they move people around, so they're like chess pieces. And I think he would be a terrific choice here for Tennessee. It matches their offensive philosophy. It's a need they have, and I think he would be a terrific choice.
Zion Johnson, what do you think of the interior offensive lineman out of Boston College?
I think he's a great player, but I don't think Tennessee drafts him.
And before you answer, let me give you a little nugget here. The roommate of Mike Vrabel's son at Boston College. So again, maybe there's a connection there at 26, but who do you have the Titans going after, Jason, here?
This is where I actually have Malik Willis getting drafted.
So slipping here all the way to 26 to the Titans.
I have Malik Willis going 26. I think even though you gave Tannehill money, I think the jury's still out on whether he can be that quarterback to lead your team to a championship. And with all the intangibles that Malik Willis has, his arm strength is phenomenal. His ceiling is very, very high. And I think at 26, you would take a chance on drafting a quarterback like Malik Willis.
And again, if Malik Willis is their coach at 26, what do you think?
Oh, I think that would be a great choice. I mean, he's going to play behind Tannehill for a couple more years. I want to go back to Zion Johnson. 350 dropbacks this year, not one pressure. He also had the best bench press, 32 at the 225 of any offensive lineman. So I'm going to, again, support him. I think he's got a lot of stuff going for him. But if Tennessee thinks they need to have somebody behind Tannehill to develop, and Willis somehow fell to there, I think it would be a savvy choice. But I love this Zion Johnson from BC.
We're going 26 to the Titans again. Don't think Malik Willis will necessarily get there, but if he does, can't argue with that pick for Tennessee. But I've got him going, of course, with Zion Johnson, the interior offensive lineman from Boston College. On to Tampa Bay now, 27. Tom Brady retires, then he unretires. He's back under center for the Buccaneers, and it all started to kind of fall into place after that. That's Dennis's Buccaneers. Dennis in the back, our producer, director, and he's getting everything done. So I'm sure he's eager to hear what we have to say here to pick 27. But when Brady came back, Coach, some other guys, Jason, they started to follow suit, bringing some other guys back. Some others, though, didn't come back. I'm going to go with the defensive tackle to pair along Vita Vea on the defensive line. I'm going to go Devontae Wyatt, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Again, jury's still out on Wyatt. Some people like him more so than others. I've got him here in the first round at pick 27 to Tampa.
Yeah, I like the pick of Devontae Wyatt at 27. Again, you need, like you said, need someone to pair with Vita Vea on the line there, and I think he would be a great value pick for Tampa Bay. And just them retooling their defense, because you can't pay everybody going forward. Some players might come up with new deals after this season coming up. So what a great way to address that by drafting a player like Wyatt with his everything he can do on the football field.
Well, I'm a big fan of Wyatt, too, on the field. I'm just not sure of some of those questionable character things that they talk about, but I'm not going to go there. What I like about him is you can never have too many good defensive tackles. Vita Vea's one of my favorite players in pro football. This guy could become that player. He's incredibly powerful. He has great arm action. He can push the pocket, as we've seen on the tape, and he's very tough-minded. He would be a great fit for Todd Bowles and playing alongside Vita Vea.
Again, Devontae Wyatt absolutely dominating in the combine this year, cleared the 80th percentile in the 10-yard splits, the 40-yard dash at a 4.77, and the broad jump 111 inches at the combine. So a testing freak. He'll slide to Tampa at 27 again to pair on that defensive line. Ndamukong Suh, a free agent, still seeing what he's going to do here in the offseason. I think that would definitely help Tampa up front defensively. That takes us to 28. Jason, you talked about it a little bit earlier, but in my mock draft, they're able to stay put at 28 and get him with their second pick of the first round. The Packers select wide receiver out of Penn State, Jahan Dotson. I'm a fan of Dotson, Jason. So Green Bay able to get Penning at 22 in my mock draft, and then a big pick for me, I think would be a great one here at 28 is Dotson from Penn State.
Yeah, it would be a great pick at 28 if the Packers could land Dotson. Great body control and elite ball skills. As we look at the notes here, you could argue has the most reliable hands receivers in the draft. But I think that either way, with whichever pick in the first round, Green Bay has to address the hole at wide receiver. So I cannot argue with Dotson at 28.
I think it would be a savvy choice, too. He's a little small for my taste in receivers, but Dotson shows up great on tape. He's a good route runner. He as you've already mentioned, has terrific hands. I like his speed. He tests well. I think he's an excellent competitor. And playing at Penn State, you've got to be able to play in the cold. And you're going to play at Green Bay, you're going to have to play in cold squared. But I think he'd be a great choice. The betting people think 6.5 is the over-under for receivers, wide receivers to go in the first round. I think it's going to be an over, and Dotson would be a nice choice for Green Bay here, and Matt LaFleur.
Again, you're seeing the highlights. I'm a fan of Dotson. 91 catches, 1,182 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 in the final 4 games for Penn State last season, 28 to Green Bay. I think it'd be a great draft for the Packers if they could get Trevor Penny and then Jahan Dotson a little bit later at pick 28. That takes us to 29 and 30, where the Chiefs now have back-to-back picks. They get, again, a pick of the Tyreek Hill trade, and they have their own pick here. So at 29, that's the pick they got from Miami. I have them taking George Karlaftis, who we talked about earlier from Purdue. Kansas City could always use some pass rushing help there up front defensively. I also think they're going to maybe take a receiver, and that's why I have Sky Moore as the receiver at 30 for them, guys. So let's just talk about these 2 picks. Kansas City with George Karlaftis at 29, and then Sky Moore at 30. Coach, what do you think?
Well, Steve Spagnuolo definitely needs help with the defense. And we already talked about this young man's athleticism, a water polo player. Yes. He's super explosive. He has wonderful hips. He can run the bend, but he's got some counter moves as well. I think this would be a great choice for Spagnuolo. They really need to firm up this defense after having lost Tyreek Hill and maybe a little bit of their offense. So let's start on the defensive side and add to that. This would be an excellent choice.
Jason? It would be an excellent choice, but I think they go a different route with defense at the 29th pick. I think they go with Nakobe Dean from Georgia to address that linebacker.
And we talked about this before we went on the air today, guys, as you're seeing George Karlaftis on your screen right now. I love Nakobe Dean. I had Devin Lloyd to the Eagles there at pick 18. I was trying to figure out a way to get Nakobe Dean back in the first round. I thought about the Patriots at 21. I think he would be great in New England. I eventually went with Booth Jr. there in the secondary with Bill Belichick. But again, it would not shock me, and I would personally, on my big board, I have him in my top 32, so I love Nakobe Dean as well. Wouldn't shock me potentially there. And then, guys, Sky Moore, the wide receiver from Western Michigan. I'm not sure if you guys have watched as much tape as I have on Sky Moore. I really like Sky Moore. Yards after the catch, I just think he could do some really big things. And what do you guys think about Sky Moore?
Well, I've only seen a little bit of his tape, but he is a good route runner. He's got wonderful hands. He's dangerous after the catch. He's a good competitor. Here you see him locked in on this red zone play. He's got a little bit of an edge to him, which sometimes you like to have. And of course, coming from Western Michigan, he's a little under the radar. But this is a team that loves to throw the ball, and the MAC has some really good defensive teams in a very competitive league. So I think this would be a very savvy choice.
And again, Sky Moore, we talked about, can do it yards after the catch. He can also punt, kick, return, do it for you on special teams. What do you think about there?
I like the pick with Sky Moore.
Who you going with, Jason?
No, I know. I like the pick. I'm going to leave it here.
That's why we're here.
I like the pick with
well, there's a couple other receivers you can throw in. I mean, Coach has one.
You can throw in possibly George Pickens.
Yeah, we heard Martin talk about him. Absolutely.
But I don't think that the Chiefs need to address the loss of Tyreek Hill with one player. Okay. But I think they already have one player on their roster that they could replace Tyreek Hill's production. I think if you feature McCall Harman a lot more, I think you'll still get the same production, honestly.
Again, I've been waiting for McCall Harman to really break out for a few years now. He hasn't been able to do it. I'm almost giving up on McCall Harman. Coach, we'll stick with that subject here. Do you think Sky Moore is a good replacement? I mean, you can't replace Tyreek Hill, let's be honest. But if you're going to take a receiver there, I know you have one that you like a little bit better there in the late first round.
Well, I do like Sky Moore, and I think there's some other good choices. But let's talk about Hartman for a second.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, Andy Reid and whoever else is involved, Eric Bieniemy in the offense, at some point you'll probably lose a little confidence when he hasn't quite emerged. Now, he's a good blocker. He's good in their tear screen schemes. He's pretty good in the red zone, but he hasn't really emerged as that dynamic threat that they were looking for. Now, part of it is the distribution of the ball. Mahomes there's only one football he's going to throw, obviously, but he has so many other targets. That may be a little bit that has probably impacted Hardman's development over the years. And if you watch him on tape, he doesn't always run his routes as hard when he's not involved as the direct receiver. So that's something they would probably want to work on. But he has, I hate to use the word big upside, but he does have that, certainly that speed and that toughness.
Again, so Sky Moore there, McCall Hardman. It's going to be either this year or never for McCall Hardman with Kansas City now that Tyreek Hill is out of there. So it's going to be an interesting season, big season for him. He's going to have to show up. I do have Sky Moore going there, and then George Karlaftis at 29.
Well, you asked me about that other receiver
That's right.
under
That's
the
what I'm
radar.
saying. You have a guy
I'm
that
a
you
big
really
fan
like.
of Christian Watson. North Dakota State, this is a guy that has really developed and improved every year in his career. He's got outstanding speed. He's long. He has that big catch radius. He can make tough catches. I just like him because a lot of people don't know about him, and I think he's one of those under-the-radar guys. He can play injured, which is really important to be able to do in the pros, and I think he would be a great kind of late first-round or early second-round pick for a team that really needs to develop a wide receiver who's got versatile skills.
Again, Christian Watson, 6'4", 208. He's
Love
got
that size, as you know.
And again, would not be shocked. You can't go wrong there. Sky Moore, Christian Watson, a few other maybe guys, George Pickens, as Jason mentioned. That'll be the three guys maybe in contention in the late first round. That takes us to 31 in Cincinnati. And right after the Super Bowl, all the talk was they need to draft offensive linemen. Well, they took care of that in free agency, adding some big names to protect Joe Burrow. So here they are at 31, and I'm going to go away from the offensive line now, and I'm going to go pass rusher, and one that a lot of people have in the early second round. I liked him, loved what he did in Mobile. Again, I like him on tape. I have Boye Mafe creeping into the first round and being Cincinnati's pick at 31. There are a few other edge guys maybe that could go there, but I really like Mafe, and I think he'd be a great fit with Hendrickson and those other defensive linemen in Cincinnati, Jason.
Not so fast, my friend.
Jason's always got the counter for you.
You got it. Hey, that's what we're here for.
At
What do you think?
31, I think you have to draft a corner because Eli Apple is not the answer. So I think
Again, that was my second need was corner. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
so. I think they go Kyer Elam from Florida.
I was back and forth on that, Jason. Again, I don't like to be a little bit biased. I do enjoy Florida Gator programs. I like Kyer Elam. I was going back and forth between Mafe and Elam here at 31. Decided to go with a pass rusher, but Cincinnati could also use a corner coach there.
Well, they need a lot of help on defense.
Yes, they do.
Burrow's got plenty of help on offense, and they're going to be able to score a lot of points. I do like Mafe. He runs the edge well. He is physical. He can get to the quarterback with a variety of moves. But I happen to agree with Jason and you on this. I think Elam would be a great pick at 31. He's got good dimensions, 6'2", 191. He's excellent in man. He's a good player. And if he falls this far, which he might, I think it would be a very savvy pick for a defense that obviously needs some help. Now, they've got Hendrickson, and that has applied some pressure. So maybe you go away from that, take the cornerback, and then hope you pick up somebody like Mafe in the second round.
Yeah, again, Jesse Bates back there anchoring that secondary. If you're able to add a talented corner there, that could really benefit Cincinnati, as you talked about, Jason. So now, right here, what I learned is to lean into my bias. Kyer Elam, I do love you, buddy. I had you outside the first round here for Mafe, but he's right there. Would be a great pick for Cincinnati at 31. That takes us to 32 and the final pick of the first round, and that's the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff, obviously there. Maybe not the long-term answer in Detroit for the Lions. And Coach, I talked about he's your top-ranked quarterback on the board. I'm going Desmond Ridder, 32 here to Detroit. A lot of people maybe have Sam Howell as the last pick of the first round here to the Lions, and obviously we talked about it. That fifth-year option is the reason why. You get him in the first round, you have that fifth-year option. I'm going with Desmond Ridder, who I love. Coach, you know you love him the most, at 32 to the Detroit Lions.
Yes, and I think the big question is what's Dan Campbell going to do with Jared Goff? I mean, he was inconsistent at times this year. He had some really good games, and other times he didn't. But let me tell you something. They have a receiver in this Amon-Ra St. Brown that I think is
so good.
Unbelievable.
Awesome
We did a game this year. I was just he's so dynamic. I mean, he can do so many different things to hurt you. He's a Deebo Samuel, maybe in a certain way even trickier, but I really like him. So the point is, how do you complement him? And if you don't think Goff is the answer, why not a player like Ridder if he were to fall this deep? I love Ridder's leadership skills, as I mentioned. I think he's much less mechanical than people like to say. He's a proven winner, as we talked about. He is mature and humble, and I think he'd be a great guy to coach. I would just love to be in that quarterback room every day with a player like Desmond Ridder. So it would be a very savvy choice if he were to fall there. And if he does, I think Detroit should go for him and put a little pressure on Jared Goff. Not necessarily to run him out, but just to say, hey, we've got a guy here that we think has the opportunity to take over this team in a couple of years if you don't perform well.
I absolutely agree. I think he'd be a great pick for the Lions. You see him in these highlights in front of us, Jason, even showing off the mobility, a little bootleg action, able to take one to the house. He is more athletic than people think, is Desmond Ridder. What do you think about the Lions there at 32?
I am of the belief that they will draft Sam Howell at 32.
So Sam, and on your big board, you have Sam Howell ahead of Desmond Ridder?
Yes. Slightly ahead, but not too far ahead. I do love Ridder's game, but I do think I don't think Ridder's going to fall this far. I think he's going to be drafted a little bit higher, which is why I have Sam Howell at 32 in the draft.
I want to agree with you about Howell. As we all probably know, before the start of the season, he was the top-ranked quarterback.
He was.
And I think it's that the other guys emerged more than he fell off. I mean, he's got some things, just like they all do, to improve upon. But I think he's a little under the radar now because of the emergence of Willis and Ridder and Pickett and so on. So let's see what he does. I think he's going to have a good career at some point in the NFL, is Howell.
Again, I'm going to take the opposition there for you guys. I'm not a big Sam Howell guy. Desmond Ridder significantly ahead of Sam Howell here on my big board. Again, I'll go with Desmond Ridder there. But to the point of Sam Howell, 2 years ago when he had that Heisman-like season, he had Michael Carter in the backfield, Diami Brown at wide receiver. Those are two pretty good NFL talents. They made impacts of their rookie seasons this year. So obviously, the little bit of a letdown this past season for Howell, that's what I kind of attribute that to. So again, if you're a Sam Howell fan, maybe that's what you look towards. I'm, though, just didn't see it out of Sam Howell for me personally. The character absolutely there in the locker room. Him and Ridder, during the combine process, all we heard about as soon as they left the room, people just talked about him nonstop. They were great in the interviews, great character guys. And again, it could be either one there at 32. I'm going to go with Ridder, and I think Sam Howell's going to go shortly after that there in the second round.
Can't disagree with you.
And now sticking quickly on the quarterback situation here, Baker Mayfield still has not found a home, guys. Would he be maybe the former #1 overall pick a few years ago, played hurt last year with that torn labrum? Where do you have Baker Mayfield among the quarterbacks in the draft? Would you maybe try to trade for him? Would he be the top quarterback here this year?
I would not trade for Baker Mayfield. Not using a draft asset on Baker Mayfield. I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. I think he actually stays in Cleveland. He'd just be on the bench.
So again, the teams are trying to, obviously battle them, coach. They don't want to give up anything for him, so they're waiting for them to release him, as they should. Deshaun Watson's there. They don't want him in the building with Cleveland anymore with everything that's happened there with the bad blood between him and the Browns. What do you think about Baker Mayfield and maybe his potential with some of these quarterbacks in the draft? Do you see one of these quarterback-needy teams maybe going that direction?
This is one of the big mysteries to me in the NFL. He has won a lot of games. I love a lot of parts of Baker Mayfield's game. I mean, he has been inconsistent. He has been injury prone a little bit, but he battles and he plays hurt, and I'm a big fan of quarterbacks that can do that. I'm just not sure where his value lies. And of course, the question with Watson is, when is he going to be available to play? So does Cleveland kind of keep him around and play as kind of that link to him? I'm just not sure. But Mayfield wants out, as we know. That at least that's what he said publicly. And I think this is a tough place for Cleveland. Just like you said, the other general managers are sitting back and waiting. I thought they might try to make a trade and package Mayfield with maybe somebody else to just tempt somebody to do it. But I'm just not smart enough to figure out the Mayfield conundrum to me. I like him as a player in certain ways. I mean, he wouldn't be my top choice. And I agree with Jason. I'm not sure I would give up some draft capital for him right now with the questions. There are probably some places that would be a good fit for him, but I'm just not sure which one it would be.
One that I think about that comes to mind, I think about the Seahawks. If they're not truly sold on Drew Lock.
Well, he would certainly fit that mobility. He's much like Russell Wilson in the way they play. Dimensions are kind of the same. I don't think that's a bad choice. I thought I thought maybe Atlanta might grab for him just to get a veteran in there for some time. But clearly that hasn't happened.
I would like him in either of those spots, guys. I'm a Baker Mayfield fan, so again, we'll see where he ends up next year. But I think if he's healthy and in the right spot, he could have some success.
I agree.
Well, again, that is your 2022 mock draft here on DETV. Before we get off the desk here, again, draft time less than 24 hours away. Guys, just final thoughts and maybe what you're looking for tomorrow night.
I'm going to look for surprises because there aren't a lot of can't-miss prospects in the first round. And I think we're going to see a few more trades than we're used to tomorrow night.
Coach? I think it's going to be a fun night. Just like Jason said and you've already mentioned, I think there are going to be a lot of surprises going forward. I think there are going to be a number of trades as well. And I think we're going to see some players kind of move around Guys that were 4th become 8th. Guys that were 10th become 3rd. So I think there's going to be a little bit of mystery going on. I think it's going to be a great night, especially if you love the draft and love the NFL. And they do a great job of marketing this. Wonderful to see them in Las Vegas. I mean, when would you ever think not only would there be a team in Las Vegas, but that there would be a draft held in Las Vegas? So, crazy things are going on, and the NFL has certainly done a great job of packaging it. I think it's going to be a great night tomorrow night. And Nick, thanks for having me. Jason, a lot of fun, and this is going to be a really interesting night tomorrow night. We'll see how your mock draft does. You notice I didn't make any predictions. I'm not smart enough.
Well, we'll see how it all ends up tomorrow night. Again, last question before we get out of here quickly. Where does the first quarterback get taken tomorrow night? Jason, where at?
I believe it's at 20.
20, Coach.
I'm with it, Jason, as well. I think it's 20. I'm not sure who it'll be, who they favor. I would be a Ritter guy, but I think that would be a great spot for Pittsburgh to grab a quarterback. And I think earlier than that is a little bit of a reach for any of the teams, whether it be Carolina, clearly at 6, probably not. Atlanta at 8, Seattle at 9. That's still a little too much for me unless you did some sort of backwards trade to maybe get into that 15, 16 spot with, how about those Philadelphia Eagles?
Wow, wouldn't that be something? Again, on the big board,
They want to trade up.
The quarterbacks.
They might want to trade back for the quarterbacks. It'd be pretty savvy.
That would be interesting. Again, my big board had the quarterbacks down there. The mock draft, though, I've got them going pretty early, so I'm going to say somebody jumps up and takes one of those quarterbacks in the top 15 for sure tomorrow night. But thanks, everyone, who's joining us here in our 2022 NFL Draft Special. For Nick Alessandrini, Jason McCall, and the coach, Bill Harman, we will see you next time. Everybody enjoy the draft tomorrow night, as well as the Philadelphia 76ers. They need to rebound. We'll see you next time on DETV.